Good afternoon, and welcome to the 2023 Commencement Colloquium at the Curtis R. Priam Experimental Media and Performing Arts Center. Please take a moment to silence all of your communication devices. Wireless access is available through RPI Public. Please welcome to the stage Mary Simoni, Acting Provost of Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is my, I hear energy in the house. Excellent. Great. It's my great honor to welcome you to the Curtis R. Priam Experimental Media and Performing Arts Center for our Commencement Colloquium. Against all odds, the power and passion of persistence. RPI's Commencement Colloquium is an important tradition as we come together as a community to celebrate the achievements of our graduating students and learn from our honorands. Conceived of and created by the 18th president of RPI, Dr. Shirley Ann Jackson, today's discussion marks our 20th Commencement Colloquium. As I said, my name is Mary Simoni, and I have served as the acting provost of RPI since January of 2023. Today, don't laugh, it's always, okay. Today I'll serve as the moderator for our panel discussion. But first I'd like to introduce Dr. Martin A. Schmidt, who became the 19th president of Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute on July 1 of 2022. President Schmidt is an accomplished administrative leader, researcher, and entrepreneur who has earned more than 30 US patents and founded or co-founded 7 startups. Since 2014, he served as the provost at MIT and was responsible for the Institute's educational programs, as well as the recruitment, promotion, and tenuring of faculty. He worked closely with MIT's deans to establish the academic priorities and with other members of the leadership team to manage financial planning and research support. He also had oversight of MIT's international engagements. Dr. Schmidt earned his BS degree in electrical engineering from this great institution, Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, in 1981. He earned his Master of Science and Ph.D. degrees in 1983 and 1988, respectively, in electrical engineering and computer science from MIT. He's a fellow of the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers, or IEEE. Please join me in welcoming to the stage Dr. Marty Schmidt.
Thank you, Mary. As you heard, Mary is the acting provost, and I've had that job, and it's a hard one. And all the things she described that I did, she does better. When I was at MIT, she does it much better here. But thank you, everyone, for joining us today for our Commencement Colloquium. I think we're in for a fascinating panel discussion as our 2 honorary degree recipients join 2 RPI faculty members for a conversation about overcoming the odds as women in science and engineering and the role of luck, passion, and persistence in propelling them forward. And I'm just extremely grateful for all the work that Mary's done to pull this together. So now I have the great pleasure of introducing our guests. I'd like to start with Dr. Marilyn Simons. RPI will award her an honorary doctorate of humane letters tomorrow morning. Dr. Simons is co-founder, co-chair, and former president of the Simons Foundation, one of the most important philanthropic organizations funding research in basic science and mathematics in the United States. Dr. Simons also serves as chair of the Board of Trustees of the Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory, a leading research institute that has played a key role in the development of the fields of molecular biology and genetics. She is a member of the boards of trustees of the National Museum of Mathematics and the Turkana Basin Institute, and serves as an advisory board member of Sandbach Films, a documentary studio dedicated to illuminating the art and beauty of scientific inquiry. Dr. Simons holds a bachelor's degree and a doctorate degree in economics from the State University of New York at Stony Brook. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Marilyn Simons. Tomorrow, we are going to award an honorary doctorate of engineering to Dr. Gordana Vunjak-Novakovic. She is university professor at Columbia University, the first engineer awarded this highest academic rank in the university's history, and the McCarthy Foundation Professor of Biomedical Engineering, Medical Science, and Dental Medicine. She directs the Laboratory for Stem Cells and Tissue Engineering, the NIH Tissue Engineering Research Center, and Columbia's Center for Dental and Craniofacial Research. She does research in engineering functional human tissues, both for regenerative medicine and for patient-specific organs on a chip, models of disease. It is truly groundbreaking work. She holds numerous patents and has founded 4 biotech companies with her students. Among her many honors is the 2021 European Patent Office European Inventor Award. She is a member of the U.S. National Academies of Engineering and Medicine, as well as the National Academy of Inventors. Born in Belgrade, Serbia, she holds bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degrees in chemical engineering from the University of Belgrade and was a Fulbright Fellow at MIT, specializing in biomedical engineering. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Gordana Vunjak-Novakovic. Thank you. Our next panelist is Dr. Karen Rogers, Associate Professor in the RPI Department of Earth and Environmental Sciences and the Director of the Rensselaer Astrobiology Research and Education Center, acronym RARE. With expertise in geochemistry and geomicrobiology, Professor Rogers investigates the planetary conditions that fostered the emergence of life on Earth and that can generate habitability throughout the solar system. She is co-lead of NASA's Prebiotic Chemistry and Early Earth Environments Consortium, and recently was appointed as co-chair of the National Academy of Sciences Committee on Astrobiology and Planetary Sciences. Professor Rogers earned her bachelor's degree at Harvard University, a master's at Stanford University, and a doctorate in Earth and Planetary Sciences at Washington University in St. Louis. Please join me in welcoming Professor Karen Rogers. And our fourth panelist today, Dr. Shayla Sawyer, is a professor in the Electrical, Computer, and Systems Engineering Department at RPI. Her nanobio optoelectronics research program expands the fundamental understanding, engineering processes, and potential applications of hybrid inorganic organic materials for optoelectronic devices and sensors. Professor Sawyer, who received our trustees' Outstanding Teacher Award in 2020, was recently named the inaugural director of RPI's Mercer X Lab. The X Lab is designed to foster student-led innovations, including by developing personalized learning tools and experimental learning approaches. Professor Sawyer earned her bachelor's degree in electrical engineering at Hampton University and her doctorate in electrical engineering at RPI. Please join me in welcoming Professor Shayla Sawyer.
Okay, thank you very much. It's a rare day.
Thank you.
That at a STEM institution, you have 5 women on the stage who are going to talk to you about their own experiences, the passion, the perseverance, their pursuit of excellence. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So just to kind of give you a lay of the land, we're going to converse up here for a little while. About 4:20, we'll take a brief break, take a few questions, comments from the audience, and then we'll resume our conversation, and then we'll open it up again for questions and and comments. Okay, so let's begin. So let me begin. Marilyn, do you recall a time or circumstance when you first realized that you were passionate about something? What did you do and why? And where did that lead you?
When I got to college and I started studying economics, a word I had barely heard of before I went to college, I just loved it. It was something I just wanted to devour everything I could get my hands on to read. I would get the course booklet each term, and I'd check off every course given that semester. So I just pursued it and loved it. And after I had finished college, then I was looking for a job, and I was just taking economics courses for fun. And a professor, the chair of the department, said to me, "Why aren't you in the Ph.D. program? You're doing all the work." And I don't think it would have occurred to me. I was just studying it because I loved it. But I enrolled and I managed to finish. I loved it.
Yeah.
So that was my first experience, just fell in love with economics.
Economics, yeah, great, great. Anyone else want to answer?
Sure, I guess I can
yeah.
answer as well. I really crave, I guess I could say I crave the moments between where I'm at the edge of what I think I know, or what I think I knew, and some curiosity, some idea that is far beyond what I know. Like, I really like a moment where I hear something from a person, or when I read a book, which is probably going to happen on the stage today, and it kind of makes me turn my head like this, right? And I really think about, well, now how do I get from what I know, what I think I know, to this big idea, this concept that seems so distant from that? And that feeling is like a tension. It's an energy that I really love. That feeling of, okay, there's something bigger, there's something more interesting out there. I need that tension. And that is just the tension of learning. I really have a passion for that moment. I like to be at the learning edge of things, generally speaking. And it's really fascinating and has energized everything that I do, from, again, just sitting and reading a book when I was younger and reading a book today. In fact, my husband often buys me books for my birthday, anniversary, right? He knows that information, I love it. So it's been really great. Or it could be, just having conversations with students, with folks that I work with, colleagues, staff members, that kind of push me a bit. I really enjoy that, and that's a passion, just learning.
Yeah, great. Cordana, how about you? You've done so much throughout your career. What passions have driven you?
Okay, so I studied chemical engineering, and this was after I was thinking between two choices. I was really, really interested in engineering, and I was very interested in medicine. And at that time, there was no way to combine the two. So I got as much education as possible in engineering. I always wanted to be in academia. This also happened. And so life was good, but I was just missing something. And very early, this was just the end of the first year of my faculty job in Belgrade, my department was kind enough to let me go for a year. I got a Fulbright fellowship, I went to MIT, and the only goal of this 1 year early sabbatical was to figure out what I'm really going to do in my professional life. And I think it was really at least in part, serendipity that I was in the place at the time when someone really super creative, Bob Langer, was launching a whole new area. And we talked, and he said, knowing what I have done for my PhD, maybe this is something that would interest you. And I said, like, okay, what is it? And he said, it's tissue engineering. And I said, like, tissue what? Because it hasn't existed. And you know how it is sometimes in life, it's like beauty. You see it and you know this is it. And the moment he explained to me what the idea is, I mean, I was sold for life. And this is what I've been doing for the last 25 years. This is like a incredible mix of the two disciplines. So my passion, in answer to your question, is to engineer human tissues for medical impact. And this is really possible today. So I think I was very lucky.
Yeah, you were very lucky. And it's interesting how chance played a part in having that particular interaction, which drove you toward
but you also
what became
need
your career.
You also need to look for opportunities. I mean, this is another component of this. I think curiosity and effort to learn and see also played a role. And people's kindness, you know, to open the door into something new for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm curious, was there a time when, Karen, chance played some part in your career that either it contributed to your success or sometimes failure? But what insights did that give you? Tell us about that, please.
Yeah, I think I'm here by chance, like right here.
Like physically here.
Right here, because of chance. I was in graduate school my first or second year as a contaminant hydrogeologist. You heard my introduction, I'm not one of those now. That's what I was studying. I was gonna get my Ph.D. in that, and a friend of a friend needed some field work help in Yellowstone National Park, and I had never seen a hot spring, so I went. And I stood at a hot spring for the first time, and I couldn't stop asking questions. Why are the microbes there? Why does the fluid smell the way it does? Why are the rocks that color? I got so excited. I was designing experiments right on. I had never seen a hot spring, and I was ready to go. I went back after a week of vacation, and I changed graduate schools. I moved halfway across the country. I studied hot springs for my PhD, and then I went on to study deep sea vents for my postdoc, and that's what I was gonna do. Microbiology and hydrothermal systems. And then chance stepped in again. I had to leave my first job, and I ended up at the Carnegie Institution in Washington, D.C., and I got introduced accidentally to a high-pressure device. And so I became a high-pressure microbiologist. And I did okay with that, and there was a job that opened up at RPI. So I came up here. I think I got hired because Bruce Watson was on the search committee, and he was from New Hampshire, and I was from New Hampshire. Another chance, and here I am.
What are the odds?
Right, and so I was gonna be a high-pressure microbiologist here, and I still am, but I took this sort of tiny side project doing prebiotic chemistry, which is chance number 3. And 10 years later, that's what I do for a living. And that's what I do every day. So I'm a big proponent of chance. I do all of these things because I took vacation in Yellowstone 20 years ago. I think that means we should all go on vacation soon. So Marilyn, I looked at you, there must be something along the way, some chance that played into your life in getting here?
Definitely. First, I would say, as I said, I got my PhD in economics, and I wanted to right away have a baby, a second baby. I had kind of postponed so I could finish my dissertation. And when our daughter was born, she had a lot of special needs. So that made me rethink my life, and I couldn't imagine not paying attention first and foremost to her needs. So because of her needs, that made me just take on short-term projects. And I remember somebody asking my husband and me, would one of us go on this board? And Jim immediately said no. And I thought, yes, I don't want to be on the board. But he said to me, I actually think you might like that experience. So I figured, okay, I'll try this board. And everything was very, the time was predictable. So that was very helpful to me in my life. And it was short-term commitments or project-oriented. So I could still do what I needed to do for my daughter and our family, but commit to this. So it turned out I loved the Budget and Finance Committee. And I hadn't ever really understood about not-for-profits. So all that just happened and were opportunities that came up, so I took that. And then my husband, who was an academic mathematician, went into quantitative finance. It wasn't called quantitative finance back then. He was really instrumental in creating that field. And all of a sudden, we had more money than we could easily spend. And so we would be making gifts, and knowing about not-for-profits as I had learned, I said to him, let's start a foundation. So sometimes I'm talking to people who are just starting out in their roles as philanthropists, and they'll say, oh, we're not big like you are. But I'll always say, we started with $1 million, and we invested in my husband's business, and all of a sudden, everything took off. It was not planned, and our foundation went from just being me and a file box in my dressing room to now we employ 500 people, and we give away substantial money to support math and science every year. So what would I say I learned from the role of chance? When opportunity presents itself, definitely consider it, the possibilities, and think about pivoting. Chance can really put opportunities there that were unplanned.
Yeah, that's a wonderful story and great advice. So, many people on the stage have served as mentors to students or colleagues. And I'm just wondering, Gordana, you've probably been in this situation where you need to cultivate passion among someone, within someone, or what strategies have you used? And when you think about mentorship, what does it mean to you?
Okay, so this is, I believe, the most important part and definitely the most pleasurable part of my academic job, being a mentor. And I also think that we are only as good as our students. So if they're succeeding, it means we succeeded. If they're failing, we failed somewhere. So this is really important. I think each of us has a different mentorship style. What I like to do is to try, first of all, like to just put it into the context. I think mathematics, biomedical engineering, computer science, it's all very different. In biomedical engineering, you are looking for people who are really sort of free thinkers, brave to start and try new things. And they naturally connect to other people because collaboration is the main ingredient of any of our projects, so collaboration is really important. So what I'm trying to do is just to get the best people I can of different kinds. We are a very heterogeneous lab, from basic science through engineering, surgery, and other medical disciplines. And so if I recruit these high quality people, I really want them to do what they want. So I'm trying over the first semester or so to help them form some ideas and generate their own question, their own project, and I'm just helping them in this. I think this is incredibly important because if you, as a doctoral student, for example, or postdoc, if you work on your own idea, you have intellectual ownership over this project. You are not pursuing someone else's brilliant plan. You are working on your project. And the other very important thing about this approach is I believe that you start practicing skills that you will need in your future professional life early on, because you learn by doing. You learn how to do research, you learn how to mentor yourself, because graduate students get undergraduate students to be their mentees. You learn how to communicate science in writing, verbally. You learn how to realize if something has value for translation, for application in medicine. So this brings us to patents and companies, etc. So I think this is really approach. It's a sort of gentle mentorship without imposing your own plans and ideas. And something very interesting that is happening in my laboratory is that with this concept, it happened multiple times that someone who developed the technology or something made the discovery during their doctoral research. This turned out to be patentable, applicable. Then we launch company, so we have co-authored papers, we are co-inventors on patents, we are co-founders of the company, and these same people expressed interest to be leadership of the companies. So we sort of operate, it's almost like a family business, like we all know each other, and there is this incredible trust and connectiveness and sharing of ideas. And I think that this, my experience is that this system works. I haven't invented it because this is what I learned from my mentors, and I really enjoyed freedom, the freedom of thinking, freedom of doing, and then I just started to do the same thing with my students. So
very nice. Yeah.
I'd really like that answer, Donna, because I already forewarned the panelists. I love to bring a point of tension to a conversation. Because when I hear your story, Karen, and I hear your story, Marilyn, I don't see chance, I see people. I see environments. I see resources that came at the right time. And I see that as a shifting of odds because of people, because of community, because those opportunities were open, because you were engaged in a way that was really authentic. And you intentionally, even in your case, Marilyn, you very intentionally said, I have my family to think about, and intentionally said, I'm going to work on short-term projects, which led, that's intention for me. And Gordana, you kind of bridged that gap as you talked about mentorship. So I wanted to highlight that I really believe in environments. I believe in community, I believe in ecosystems. And I see this over and over and over again in much of what you say about mentorship in my research and in the classroom. I really was very intentional. I love this profession because I felt like I can create my own world and create that world for students. And I'll give an example in the classroom. I do three main things that I think shifts the odds for a lot of students and really opens up opportunity. The first thing is I actually raise the expectations for excellence. And by that, I mean, I really try to engage what students are interested in through bigger ideas like grand challenges. and sustainability goals. Really bring these really big societal goals into the classroom so they can align themselves to it. So that's a raise of expectation from just an exam to what do you want to affect in the world. The second thing that I do is do my best to provide as many resources as possible, like what happened with your story, Marilyn and Karen. Some influx of resources helped you make that jump. And for students, that could be, some background information, some, videos, something that will allow them to bridge the gap between what they want to do and what they know they can do. And then the third thing is exactly what you said, Gordana. Give students ownership. Give them a sense of agency, that they can choose the type of lab that they do, whether they do something that's really big and top down or bottom up, which is step by step. It's kind of like moving from pedagogy to andragogy, and there's one in the middle, I think it's called herdagogy. I learned this, again, learning. I learned this from, from someone, Doug Mercer. But I will say this, that this creating my own world to include more students and to perceive that people have different learning styles and really want a really high standard of excellence, that I noticed that 2 different sets of people are kind of really like this. There were the standard bearers, ABET. So the people who hold the standard for engineering was like, keep doing whatever you're doing. We really like that you give these options and you align them to societal goals. It got a lot of good praise and a strength for our department. And then a revolutionary, someone that's like, we have to upend the standards, right? Doug Mercer, right, said, no, I really like this. You just keep pushing it, make it bigger. Use the Mercer X Lab to give students the experience, the hands-on experience that's necessary. So you got the standard bearers and the revolutionaries, both saying, do more of that. I said, there must be something true about this. And I really believe in environments. I believe in ecosystems. I believe in shifting odds. If you would have asked me today, do you think it's odd that you're at this place right now? The answer is no, not at all. Do you know how many communities and people who have fed into me intentionally and how many environments I intentionally walk to make this happen? It's about that for me, not just chance.
All right.
I think that my experience with mentoring has been in a different context. So at Stony Brook University, we have a women's mentoring program, and the women are significantly older, and the students are generally young women who are junior year going in senior year and thinking about their career and their future. So I try to do 2 different things when I work with my mentees. One is I'm very pragmatic and task-oriented, but also maybe I can help them dream a little bit. So I remember my first mentee, she was a physics major, and we were asked to help them find an internship between junior year and senior year. So she had several places she had in mind, and they were good. But I said to her, well, did you ever think about CERN? Maybe you could apply to CERN. And she just looked at me and said, that would be a dream. And I, started looking into it, and so did she. And she said, no, the deadline for applications has passed. And I said, well, let's see anyway. And I kind of kept talking to people, and we did find a feeder into CERN that the deadline hadn't passed. Right. So she did get into CERN, and in fact, I went to visit her when she was there, and she was delighted. So I think that's just real life practical navigating, like what how could you maybe push your dream or reach a little bit, and also poke at those perceived barriers and fences to see if there's a way around it or another door or something like that. So
Yeah, nice. It's great. Okay,
Can I add something?
Please.
sure.
It follows what you just said, going to environment, to ecosystem. An incredibly important thing is that you generate a culture that failing is
Yes.
a normal part of the process.
Yes.
yes.
This is really, really important. And then people can tell you everything that happens. It's like with our kids, there is nothing too bad that you cannot tell me everything.
Yeah.
So I believe that if you are like in science world, if you are not failing, you are not innovating enough. So I think this encouragement really is really motivating people to be brave, to think big, to pursue ideas. So I think this is a kind of friendly, nurturing environment that I think each of us is really obliged to form, rather than setting super high expectations and like if you don't meet the bar, you are a failure. I mean, this happens, as we know, in some environments, and I think it's really important to understand how how to manage the expectations.
And not be afraid of failure, certainly, yeah.
Failure iteration is everything.
Yeah.
It's everything. The risk-taking that's necessary in giving students the opportunity to do that is essential if you're going to create innovators, right?
Absolutely.
And when they're successful, don't you get vicarious
Oh my God.
pleasure out of it?
It's addictive. It's addictive.
It's better than when we are, right?
Yes.
Watching our students be successful.
Yes.
So much more satisfying than doing it yourself. That's whatever.
It's amazing, for sure.
Absolutely. Okay, well, so we've all talked about persistence and mentorship and our passions, but was there ever a time when you thought you were passionate about something and then it started to fade and you were left with maybe a void, looking around for a new passion? Did that ever happen to you?
Well, I wouldn't say void, but by the time I was done with my Ph.D., I definitely was not interested in pursuing academia. I didn't feel a void, but I definitely, as I mentioned, when I found the Budget and Finance Committee, I realized that as a microeconomist, I was very interested in the applications. So economics was more than, first of all, I wasn't a macro economist. I liked micro. I liked watching how people worked. I liked thinking about jobs. So moving into businesses also really captivated my interest. So I would say my whole passion just kind of morphed into practical applications.
Yeah.
How about for you? Did you?
Yeah, I mean, there was that time at the hot spring where I just didn't understand how it worked. And I think that's why what am I? I'm an earth scientist, I'm a chemist, I'm a geomicrobiologist. There's not a science that I don't do. I'm passionate about figuring out how it all works together out there when I walk around outside. And I can't stop thinking about it. And here I am, this is what I get to do for a living. But it's not always what I do 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. This job has some other pieces to it, right? I don't get to spend every minute in the lab or talking to my students. There are forms to be filled out and budgets to write and annual reports to send in, and sometimes that can can make you feel a few degrees separated from your passion, right? When you're writing an annual report, it doesn't feel like you're really making progress on understanding why that microbe lives there. You really want to know. And so you have to do something about that, because you can't just write annual reports for your whole career. You'll lose why you're here. And so I have some tricks. One of the tricks is to just put the to-do list aside and not be the responsible faculty member that I should be. Sorry. I imagine the deans out there, sorry. Sorry, Marty. But you put it aside and you do a deep dive in the literature, or I walk down the hall to see my students. What doesn't work? Let's fix it. Should we design an experiment? And the chalkboard comes out and the eraser, and we design a new experiment. And you just give yourself the freedom to be a creative scientist again. There's a difference between the passion of who I am and the job I have. And you have to make sure you do both. And I find that when I do that, then my students are all excited too, right? When they see me running around with my to-do list, they're not that excited about what they do. But when we sit down and think about a new device that we could build, how would we design it? Where does this go? How are we gonna solve this engineering problem? They get all excited. And so when I'm passionate, they're passionate. So Gordana, you must do this in your lab as well. Inspire sort of passion in your students. It's the only way labs are successful.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you. I mean, it's complicated. I think we will agree about it. And I think a lot about life in academia, and then there is a lot of discussions with our students, you know, especially girls who are like agonizing, like, shall I have academic career or not, or shall I choose family? And then you're trying to show them and convince them that the only option is both. Like, science is most important in our lives and family is most important in our lives, and I mean, it's unranked. But when you think about our jobs, I mean, for me, this is the best job in the world because each day is different. You get to pursue some big ideas. You work with super smart people, and you have this intellectual freedom, you know, it's just like nobody's telling you what to do and when it's done. So this is like on a good side, but then when you look into the other side, your job is never done. You know, there is a lot of stress because you need what sometimes keeps me awake at night, like, do I have everything it's need to support these people on a long term? You know, it's stressful, and you don't want this stress to be transferred to other people. I mean, this is what I really keep close to my chest. It's not 9 to 5. It's never done. And when it's really a lifestyle, so you either love it or hate it. I mean, this is really how I see it. And I think it's also very important to have support, like having supportive family is incredibly important. And I mean, I can talk more about other things that are important that we all learned, you know, over the years, like how important it is to say no. I mean, it took me years to say no. I was like, when I was very young, super apologetic. I'm so sorry I cannot write this chapter, I'll do it next time. And so, you know, you learn you need to say no, because otherwise you are not focused, you cannot accomplish anything. Delegating. This is like a real survival skill. You know, you need to delegate things, you need to trust people. You trust your people, you divide the jobs. So these are some of the things. And also on the other hand, like always keep thinking about everyone you're taking care of now and you have taken in the past, because like this person who left to take faculty jobs still needs support, recommendations, being nominated for someone. It's complicated. I mean, I hope this is not confusing. I'm just saying, like, I'm really enjoying it, but it's not an easy job, and then you need to juggle quite a few balls every day to come to the next day, so.
At least 10 balls at a time.
At least, right?
Grad school felt like three balls at a time. And the professorship feels about 10 at a time, yeah, for sure. I just have a quick comment about the transition in research. And again, people matter a lot. My research not too long ago was entirely focused on nanomaterials and metal oxides and electron transport between different types of materials. And then one day, I went to an intentional space that was like a research, it's what Robert Hall would hold. I can't remember the phrase, but it was a place where people would come together and say 5 minutes of research, almost like a little incubation stage. And a professor got up and started talking about these microbes that transport electrons to each other and possibly to substrates. And I did that head turn thing, like, what? It looked strange, it was strange, and I got really, really interested in, well, how does that happen? What does that mean? How many bacteria do this? That was a really important moment. And a few months later, there was a student that came to my office. I was 7 months pregnant. So I was about to go on maternity leave, and he came in, Dr. Dylan Rees now, and just said, Sawyer, I'm looking for somebody in ECSE that does anything with biology, which I was. I was trying to sense E. coli with optoelectronics. So he said, can you be a co-advisor for me? And I just looked at him like, how? I'm about to go on maternity leave. And he had a couple years only to finish his Ph.D. And the decision to work with Dr. Rees was like the best decision, a risky decision at the time, to really think about looking at microbes from our perspective as an as someone in electrical engineering that does device physics. And trying to understand how to make devices. It's been a fascinating ride. There's a lot to learn. I have sat with Karen and Cynthia Collins in our room, right, in an office, and we're drawing pictures. It's like Pictionary to try to understand the language, the idea of an acceptor for microbes and the idea of an acceptor for ECSE is different, right? So just getting the language right. I mean, it was a great time to just sit and kind of talk and do Pictionary to understand concepts. That, to me, is like pushing beyond a barrier of what I knew and getting into something really fascinating, and running to understand that is what we're in the middle of right now, and it's been really fascinating and fun. That's the joy of research, right? Yeah.
So listening to everybody is reminding me that we're all really lucky that we're around so much research, scientific research that's going on, and so many new ideas, and that's always so inspiring. Yeah. And even listening to you made me think, oh, you know, I more from economics, but, you know, was in leadership at a foundation supporting math and science. And I do think of that as producing progress for the future. So it's, you know, on that path of human progress produced by human ingenuity, but the day-to-day inspiration of listening to people with new ideas and out-of-the-box thinking, it just can be awesome. So that is really inspiring and produces passion.
For sure.
Why don't we pause for a moment and see if our audience members have any questions or comments for us. I think there are microphones in the aisles, but maybe the house lights up for a moment.
I might get to see.
Hello. My name is Kate. I'm
Hi, Kate.
master's student. I know a couple people on the stage, but I'm a master's student at RPI doing life science entrepreneurship, and my undergraduate was in electrical. So one thing I've noticed is that this group of people is so deeply interdisciplinary. Just looking at all of your backgrounds, you switched from fields to fields, and tying things together is really critical. But I think interdisciplinary research is a really high risk, high reward situation, especially if you go back 10, 20, 30 years, it gets more and more kind of unnormalized to be a part of interdisciplinary research. So I'm curious, especially at the start of your careers, what was the thing that kind of inspired bravery in you to continue when people told you, like, yeah, it's ridiculous that you would tie together engineering and medicine or something like that?
Please.
Good comment. I mean, you really, you follow your passion. You follow what you really want to accomplish. I think this is what makes you brave to try to go into completely new endeavors. I mean, I was always very interested in science is great. We enjoy doing it. We publish nice papers. But at the end of the day, you really want someone to benefit for something that you have done. And to get to this point, you do need, I mean, it really happens through convergence of disciplines. This is how today some of the most exciting science happens. It happens really at the interfaces of disciplines rather than like within one isolated area.
Okay, great. I see Mary. Nellis, yeah.
Hi, my name is Mary Nellis. I'm the Director of International Services. And also Dr. Gordana, a previous Fulbright recipient. It was really exciting for me to hear that that was pivotal in your career. And so my question is actually for you. I wonder what advice you have for our international graduates, of which we have 41% of our graduate students are international here at RPI. What advice do you have for those students who maybe haven't experienced a positive mentorship opportunity and or as these graduates enter into a vast international scientific realm? I would love to hear you speak about that. And any of you, actually. I'm just pointing to her because she's a fellow Fulbright alum.
Sure. I mean, I can say briefly, but I mean, I'm sure that everyone can answer. I mean, like a normal environment in which I operate, and I believe all of us, is we have this very diverse population of students. I mean, I'm personally totally blind to like who is coming from where. I mean, my lab is like a mini United Nations. I mean, it just happened like this because you look for quality and you get it. Fortunately, they are mechanisms that are merit-based, that don't look into, do you have, you know, are you a citizen or not? Are you foreign students? And these talented students are really funded, you know, I mean, anyone who is accepted to graduate program, as you know, is fully funded. So I think these people, and why many international students gravitate to the United States is because there is much higher potential for this kind of interdisciplinary research. On one hand, because of the resources, but on the other hand, it may be more important because of this very effective collaboration between people from different disciplines. So I think it's changed. I mean, it was not the case many years ago, but today I think we have a very friendly environment at our universities for young and talented people.
May I follow up? I'm curious, what recommendations do you have for finding those mentorship opportunities?
I mean, you mean how a student can find a mentor? Is this a question?
Yes, I mean, am I still here? Yes. Yes, I mean, I run across students. I think maybe it's because in my position, I often run across students in my career that are facing challenges. And this is where maybe opening it up to everybody. For those students who have run into challenges, finding a mentor, maybe some guidance for them. This is kind of what I'm, you know, in the broader.
I think I understand what you're saying. I think it's also a matter of like this personal match. It's not only qualifications, you know, what is the lab where you go. I mean, at the end of the day, it's really two people working together. So I think during interviewing and everything we do for our graduate students to just let them know what all exists, they just find their perfect person and they match with the lab where they feel very comfortable about their future mentor and PI. I think this is really important. And there is no other way but just to do it through personal contact. Another thing that I always advise students, and I know my son was doing the same when he was like looking for residencies, and so you don't only talk with your future mentor, you look at how are the people around them doing. This is most important. Like if you see that their peers are happy, you go there. Because this is the living proof, you know, that this mentor is doing a good job. I mean, if you feel that your future colleagues, you know, peers are miserable, I mean, you don't go there. So I think it's really important to use judgment and go to the right place.
I have to say this, take the chance out of the equation. Yeah. Do you, I'm sorry, I can't emphasize this enough. I really believe in environments. I really believe in what you just said. I really believe in going around asking questions of students and of the mentor, so you get an alignment of how you work. What are you goal-centric? Do you need a little bit more pushing? And really tailoring you have to know yourself and then really talk to the group that you're going into to make sure you're a fit. And just know that I had a mentor in undergrad that scratched entire schools off of the list for me. Okay, this school, nope, doesn't have the environment. This school's okay, but that professor, nope, not gonna work. That is how intentional it was for me. It was not a chance. I can't afford chance. I have to actually look and try to investigate and get information to try to figure out if I'll be a fit. And that's my advice, is be proactive as much as you can.
Have you had the experience, I will, have you had the experience of stepping into an environment that maybe wasn't a good fit?
No.
Okay.
But I like your thinking, try to get chance out of the equation to the extent that you can and be proactive.
That's what Gordana just said, and I very, very much push that idea for lots of people.
Great. How about a question from this side, please?
Hi, my name is Rose. I'm a graduating aerospace mechanical engineer.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I just wanted to get, I wanted to ask, what of each of you, what do you think was your most influential experience, not necessarily in your career, but in shaping your perspective and how you view life?
We're going to be here the rest of the day.
You're the origins of life person. Origins of life. Complicated origins of life person. Go.
Thank you, Sheila. I really love being on the spot with the hardest question. It's a great question, Rose. It really is. And now you all know that RPI students are smarter than their faculty. You know, it's, God. One thing that I think about all the time is that we're small, and that's okay. We have big, ginormous questions. But the universe is big, and the planet is big, and we've been around for 4 billion years, and there's so many people, and science is moving forward, and so to accept your smallness as a significant contribution is something, I think that sense of scale is really important, right? I am not gonna solve the origin of life. I'm not. No single person is. There are some people who think they will, but no single person will. But that doesn't make what I do meaningless. I'm gonna add a dot on the Impressionist painting, and one day, very far from now, on a painting that I won't see, everyone will have added their dots and it will be beautiful. And so I think having a sense of scale and not being intimidated by it is one of those things that I try and keep in mind. I think it's, I don't know, it might be useful.
You're making me think.
This side, please.
Oh,
Oh, sorry.
I just wanted to add
short.
to that. You're making me think, Karen, when I was an undergrad, I remember, oh no, I was a grad student, and I was talking to my office mate, and we were having coffee, and I said, I am really depressed because I realize I will never be another John Maynard Keynes. And he said to me, who cares? And I thought to myself, yeah, why do I have to be John Maynard Keynes? And I was just happy to go on and be me and make my contribution.
We're very glad that you're Marilyn Science.
I have one statement. I just did the last lecture, and I gave 5 stories. It'll be posted somewhere.
Thank you.
Hi. In regards to some of your comments on the role of a mentor to cultivate a sense of ownership, as an undergrad and graduating this year, I'm interested in how you would approach the problem of cultivating this sense in students really disinterested and has never in their academic career really been told that they should have a sense of ownership. In fact, mostly have just been given problems where they really aren't expected to own them at all.
Wow. That's a tough one.
Well, there's something called the Rensselaer Forward Education, Innovation, and Living and Learning Committee that the president just put together. And there are folks on that committee here in the audience today. 2 of us are the chair and the vice chair are here. Just know that our survey of the community is really being taken into account, that not every student gets the same experience. And I think the president and this committee is really engaged and active in really trying to broaden this experience of feeling ownership for the next generation of students that come in the next 10 years. So we really appreciate what you're saying. I think we're gonna have some strategies that will make this happen for a broader group of students, for sure. That's all we've been talking about.
Yeah. Thanks for your question.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. I think we have time for one more question. I see that there are other people standing though, but we'll have another break for questions a little bit later, but please.
I want to thank you. I think this is a fantastic opportunity to listen to your stories and learn from it. So the power of passion, persistence, and the things that keep you up at night. My name is Azita, and I teach ethics to our engineers. So my question for you, if you'd be kind enough to share, is if you could use an example of an ethical dilemma that you faced, what surprised you, and what you walked away learning from it. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Azita.
How many?
Stump the panel.
Well, I will jump in, at least to start the conversation. And this is just something recent, but it could be applied more generally. When somebody says something that's offensive and you don't speak up. So we were having a meeting, and someone's behavior was not something many of us approved of at the time. And I thought about it, didn't speak it wasn't reprehensible. If it were reprehensible, I think somebody would have been forced to action, but it was just that slippery slope. And the reason why it's very much on my mind is last night I was at an event, and the woman who was speaking was the White House spokesperson during COVID. And she talked about when she heard Trump telling that story about taking the bleach to cope with COVID. And nobody said there, no, that's ridiculous, you shouldn't, you know, we can't put that on. It was already going out over the news. And so that reminded me of my own situation. I was sitting next to her and she said she is always revisiting that moment. What should she have done? But we all have moments like that. Somebody says something that's uncomfortable. And, you know, I guess my preference might be to speak separately offline, but there are times that one should just say something publicly. And so her dilemma really made me go back and rethink my own behavior. And I mean, life is, we're always learning, even at every decade, not just students here, and we're always thinking, what could I have done better? So I think that's just when to speak up and, you know, say right or wrong.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, we're gonna resume our conversation up here. We're gonna focus on persistence, perseverance. I think everyone on this stage knows that research has shown that women working in the STEM disciplines oftentimes perceive the workplace differently from their male colleagues. A lot of times women are more likely to perceive the inequities and think sometimes the odds are stacked against them. I'm wondering, has gender identity played a role in your success or failure? And how do you cultivate resilience if you think the odds are stacked against you, or if you don't think it's chance, you think the environment is stacked against you?
I think it still plays a role to some extent. I mean, we all know that things improved very substantially. So you mentioned, Mary, in the beginning, this is like very non-diverse panel. I mean, this wouldn't happen 20 years ago. We don't experience so much the situation when you're the only woman in the room. I mean, these times are gone, but we still have a long way to go. And I feel very, very strongly that our responsibility and job is to promote talent and to encourage those that may be more vulnerable, having more difficulty, carrying more weight if you are thinking about starting a family. And this is particularly important somewhere at the middle level. This is where the leaky pipe is. You know, our undergrads are doing great. Graduate students so-and-so. And then you often see at the next level, like in academia, postdoc, academic position, in business, when you get to the leadership role, this is where actually the system still breaks, I think, too often. So I think it still plays. It's also another factor is it's not only gender, it's if someone is coming from underserved, underrepresented environment, I think this is where we can really make a difference and move a needle if you are proactive. And if you still look into merit and quality, but then you really try to give people equal opportunity, you know, to just pursue their dreams. So I think it's a very important question.
Thank you.
So I'm not in a position in STEM where I'm trying to get my own academic work recognized. So many times, you know, I'm in the position of funder, so I'm fortunate to be in that position. But I've done a lot of fundraising as well. So because I've seen life from both sides of the table, I try to be really respectful with everyone who's coming to me to ask for funding, because sometimes I sit in that place also, going to somebody else. My grandmother always used to tell us when we were young, if you're lucky enough, you'll live long enough and you'll get to see life from every side of the table. And I definitely try to keep that in mind. Another thing that I was talking about having a child with special needs, and she's diagnosed on the autism spectrum. And one thing that our daughter doesn't understand is social hierarchy. We all have that nonverbal radar to pick up social signals that she's very oblivious to. So growing up, I'd have to transcribe that from her, what we're seeing, what the feeling is, and communicate that to her, but also learn from her, how ridiculous some of the social expectations we have are. So I've learned so much from her. But because of that, when I'm sitting in a room, I probably have had more experience trying to pick up a lot of nonverbal information and watch how people are talking. So just as an aside, I'll just tell this story about our daughter. When she was 12, she wanted to go to sleepaway camp, and she was being interviewed by the camp director, who said to her, "How do you do? My name is Gordon Parks, but you may call me Gordy." And she said, "How do you do? My name is Audrey Simons, and you may call me Audrey." It's kind of beautiful. Right. And so I've learned a lot, and when I'm sitting in a room with a bunch of people, I just try to be aware of who's talking down, how symmetric the conversation is. And I think, though, that it can go both ways, that women can be in positions of power also. So, and one more thing I'd just like to say, being a woman involved in STEM, is I also get lots of opportunities, because I think at this time, a lot of places are trying to be more inclusive. So even if I get an opportunity and I think, oh, I was asked because I'm a woman, I'm proud to have the opportunity and eager to try to rise to the challenge. What do you think?
Oh, boy, does that speak to me. I've been a woman in science, well, probably since I was born, but I really remember it when I was a junior in college. I was in my professor's office, my advisor, and he said to me, "So, Karen, what do you want to do with your life?" And I thought about it, and it didn't take me long, because I had already been doing research. I was deep into this, and I said, "Well, I want to be a good scientist." And there was this dead silence. Not a good sign. And he said, "Scientist?" And I could sort of feel the question mark hanging in the room, and I said, "Yes." And he said, "Good scientist?" And I remember thinking to myself, he's a really smart guy. How many people come in here and say, "I want to be a bad scientist"? I was astonished. And I said, "Well, yes." And he said, "You know, Karen, you're very charming. You should try Congress." Okay. So you can imagine, right, that this has stayed with me for all of these decades. It has stayed with me, And I came up at a time, right, where a lot of the federal agencies are trying to fund more women, to fund more underrepresented minorities, to fund more early career folks. And I got funded, which was great, because it's an amazing opportunity for me to go do my science. And in the back of my head, all I can think is it just because I'm charming? Charming being a woman? Is it that thing that makes me special? Is it not the good scientist part? I mean, in academia, we all suffer from this imposter syndrome, this idea that we're really actually not this good and someone's gonna figure us out any minute now. And so I've lived with this for a long time, and so this idea of gender identity and how that feeds into women in science has stayed with me. But I've learned two things. One is that what they used to call charming is now called interpersonal skills. And it's on every job description out there. These interpersonal skills are in really, really high demand. And so it's not maybe such a bad thing. But the other thing I've learned, and this was really recently, and it was something I had to teach myself, and that was that, yes, I have interpersonal skills, but that is not instead of being a good scientist. It is in addition to. I am a good scientist. Sorry, but I am. And I have interpersonal skills, and I can do both. And it is this power of and. Shayla, I know you have something to say about the power of and.
I have to put this down for a second. The power of and. I'll give you one power. I'm going to speak a bit about intersectionality, right? So I am a woman, but I am also 6'4" in these heels. 6'4.5". I'm also very tall. I am also African-American woman, right? I am also someone that has come from a relative amount of privilege, right? With STEM parents that have taught me a number of things, including how to navigate systems that I was going to encounter. But not only how to navigate those systems, but inherently knowing from 5 years old, most of those systems were not designed with you in mind, and therefore are inherently flawed. So imagine thinking from a young age, I need to figure out how to really engage and dominate this thing, but for the purpose of making it better, from the start, from as soon as you enter it, you're thinking, how can I make this better? And being raised to do that, right? So there's many rooms that I enter. I like the idea of what you're talking about with your daughter, you said, Marilyn, which is every room I go in for survival or thrival reasons, I guess whatever one. I'm trying to read the room. Maybe, I believe I'm definitely undiagnosed, probably, on the spectrum, because I am investigating the power dynamics of every single room. And I am always surprised by how power flows. It is not always men. It really depends on who's in the room, what's going on, what's being said. And it can shift with just one statement, all the power moves to, like all the energy to do something moves over here. And it's fascinating to me to watch that, but to look for it and to engage with it. And so I just say, not every woman here has the same experiment walking into rooms. We are all different. Different in history, legacy, privilege, in how we interact with people. And it's going to be different, and I know it's the same for some men, for most men. We're all individuals, but it's really important to try to investigate and even out, really think about who's in the room and who's not in the room and why, and try to push back to get better solutions. Not just the moral solution. I actually believe there are much better solutions as we approach bringing in more people, because intersectionality is essential to solving complex problems. And that's all we have left. There are no simple ones anymore, sorry. Sorry, young people. All the simple ones are gone. It's too late. We have to bring in everyone to solve the major challenges that we have today. And it's really important to do that. Yeah.
So we've been talking, Marilyn, about some of these things, what Shayla just mentioned. Sometimes things are stacked against you, sometimes they're not. But either way, we tend to, I think, get through with our sort of passion. Sometimes I call it my stubbornness. So can you talk about an experience where something, maybe the odds were stacked against you and, you know, you just did it? And what did you learn about yourself and how to navigate?
So for me, at one point in our foundation, I wanted to start, one of the staff members had come. He was a communications person, and he suggested that we start an editorially independent science news magazine. And I liked this. I had some experience writing a newsletter for our daughter's school when she was young. And I really liked being, you know, getting the news out and working with a team. And I thought this sounded great. And I knew I had heard many people talk about how Scientific American wasn't what it used to be. And the National New York Academy of Sciences used to have a publication called The Sciences that people spoke very highly of, but that was no longer being published. So when Thomas came suggesting this, I really liked the idea. And so, but the condition was editorial independence. So at first he wanted to call it Simon's Science News, which made us a little nervous if you give somebody else permission to use your name and they're editorially independent. You can't control what they're going to write. That was a little nerve-wracking, but you know, we figured, okay, let's start this. So he was new to this, and like he would try some journalistic tricks to grab eyeballs, right? All I cared about, all Jim cared about, we were both overseeing the foundation, was that the news was accurate and cutting edge and really great. So he'd have a headline, Thomas would have a headline that would make everybody nervous, or he'd go for a fringe representative to like open up the article. And when I would say to him, you know, look, how could you pick this? That isn't, you know, that's right out there in the tails. He would claim he gave all points of view equal coverage, but believe me, not the same real estate. There's prime real estate and the real estate that comes down at the end of the article that maybe nobody reads. So, but we were trying, and it was going okay, but sometimes the scientists at the foundation would speak not directly to me. It would come through the grapevine, or more likely, come to my husband, who would say to me. So the thing about dealing with it is, I learned to talk the stats and talk the data to the scientists, and we were being told we weren't centric enough to our own scientists. You see, if our scientists supported one point of view, our scientists really didn't want the other point of view covered. So, but we were able to demonstrate that the data showed the frequency, just talk that language, and also Thomas and I really got on the same page about what was fact, because, well, we all know, we all consume media, and who could believe, we're talking about fake news or alternative facts. At least Thomas and I could agree on facts. And I'm really pleased because everyone at our foundation, by the way, the name of the e-magazine is Quanta Magazine. It's an e-magazine, and last year we even got a Pulitzer Prize for covering the James Webb Telescope. So persistence, working with all the parties, ironing out, talking about what's in between the cracks, right? Like, where does truth end? And so that was my experience. I'm glad I persisted, and the magazine's doing great. So.
Nice. Anybody else? Okay, I'm gonna switch gears here a little bit. We've all had this happen. Sometimes life throws you a wicked curveball. It could be an unexpected death. It could be some tragedy. It could be that you wrecked your car. Or it could be that you suddenly got recognition for something that you're like, oh my goodness, I'm so surprised. Can you talk about a time where life threw you a wicked curveball, and what did you do to get through it? How are you resilient through that?
I'm happy to start this one. It's funny, you cannot plan in life when your highs and your lows come. Sometimes they come at the same time, in very relative same time. So one of the biggest highs of my life was marrying my husband in 2010. He's 1 in 8.3 billion. I'm so glad he found me, and I found him, and we got married. And then just in kind of the early stages of, I guess, marital bliss, which we're still in, 12 years later. But 1 year in, my sister was murdered in 2011. And she had just applied to Columbia University for a bioethics program. So this is really, really hard. She was my best friend, right? Hard on my family, hard on my parents, hard in the community. And I was a young professor, I was probably 3-4 years in as a professor. And I have to say, again, environment, people, the support of people, the support of my family, the support of my husband. Also, I'm a person of faith, and having that grounding was really important to me. And then I really loved my office. It's kind of strange to say it like that, but I loved coming to work still. It gave me something else to do, to think about. I love the interaction of students because I saw that as part of her legacy, and to continue to interact with students, and to reach out to students who may have gone through similar trauma, mental health issues, et cetera. So in part, my heart remains broken, but I think that it provides an openness to other humans, other humans in a different way. And her legacy lives on in me and in the students who have been touched by that openness that I try to have sometimes. So that's my story.
So for me, like you, my response was just go to the office one step in front of the others. And what happened in my life, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And I was diagnosed at 48, and my best friend was diagnosed maybe 1 month ahead of me. So I was first stage, and she was not so lucky. And going through that really made me see how finite my life was going to be. And I have to say, up until then, I just felt like my life stretched on forever ahead of me. But that really made me think that I might just have a short time. So what was really important for me about life, I just kept going, but really thought about my priorities and was very conscious of how I was using my time, that it was going to be constructive. And so it was helpful to me. It's one of those things that got that file box out of my dressing room and into an office and start building our foundation. So.
Yeah, those are really incredible stories. So I guess as we draw to a close, we open again before Q&A. We have many wonderful students receiving their Bachelor of Science degrees tomorrow. This morning we hooded many Ph.D. students. It was a very exciting ceremony right on this very stage. And then also some master's students will receive their degrees tomorrow as well. Do any of you have advice for our graduates?
I'll start. I don't mind. I know everyone up here has an amazing piece of advice. Mine is to work hard, but to set your own high bar, to be your own high bar. Don't ever judge yourself against anyone else. It is, first of all, it is a marathon that never ends, and everyone loses. So it's not worth judging yourself against others. But if you set your best as your bar, you can never disappoint anyone, and not yourself, ever. And there's no failure there. No matter what happens in the lab that day, whether it works or not, if you did your best, that's all there is. And there's nothing that can make you more proud. And so work hard, but set your own high bar. That's my advice.
I have something for students. I literally on the drive here, well, let's say, but when I parked here, on the drive here, I saw a text from one of my friends. I did see it. And it's been a friend, she's my friend since 15 years old. She also happens to be about 6 foot, and she's now a lawyer and looking to apply for a judgeship, I think, which is amazing. It's really funny, hard trajectories aligned in some ways. And at one time we played basketball together. And then I have another group of really close inner circle women, also taller than 5'10". There's a pattern here. I mean, they all, I would say, I didn't even know what they did. For about a decade, I didn't know what their occupations were. It didn't matter. We have a connection about life that doesn't need to be explained. Like you could just start a conversation and keep going. And one of the conversations that we've had for about a year, and this text that I just saw, was just, really thinking deeply and hard about what you want. Like as women, as persons of color, we're all different cultures, but really think about it. It's okay to think about what you want. And once you figure out whatever that deep thing is, it's not about a comparison. It's not about this room I want to get into. No. I'm talking about like, what do you really fundamentally deeply want? Take the time to figure that out. And then from there, I think there's a process of figuring out the what and the how. And I really, really focus, when I figure out something deep that I want, whatever that may be, in research and teaching, then I start thinking about how immediately, because I think the how matters. The how brings in more people than normal. The how considers parallel universes to get to where you need to go, so to speak. The how is essential. And then I land on the what at the end, actually, because I don't know where I'm going to end up. But I think it's important for all students to really take the time to get deeper than yourself and figure out what that thing is or how you want to move through the world. I think that's the way I put it. How do you want to move through the world in this stage of your life? And just go for it. Trust your gut. Surround yourself with a community of people like my friends that are amazing and supportive, and go for it. It's really essential.
All right, thank you. Gordana, would you like to offer some?
Sure. So what I like to suggest the students, I mean, it's very difficult and sometimes inappropriate to advise young people, you know, they know what they want to do. But what I like to suggest is a single most important thing professionally, I think, is that you find something that you really care about, something you're passionate about, and pursue this. Something that would really make you a happy, balanced person. It's not necessarily something your parents want you to do or your colleagues or something that's paid best. It's something that would really fulfill you, so you have a mission in this world. And it's also very important for all of us to remind ourselves, each of us is best at something. So how to find this, you know, how to find your call, because we all have this ambition, you know, that we really want to do some good. And if you can combine something that you really care about and you are passionate about, I think this is an ideal situation. This is not easy. It may require some experimentation, you know, trying things, be brave about, nothing is forever, nothing has to be forever, you can do changes, but like try to find this thing. And if this is the case, then I think you really need to dream big, like really have these big goals for your life. I mean, young people, life is ahead of you. You can be anything you want. So dream big, but also work hard. Be very persistent. So like this combination of, you know, like a vision and very hard work is something that really can get you somewhere. So I don't know how good advice this is, but this is what I was always telling my students and also reminding myself, you know, it's something that's very important for us.
Marilyn?
So I think I would say do what you can when you're, you know, we don't work alone, we work with others, and contribute what you can contribute. And big or small, it might make all the difference between success and failure. And when I had this epiphany once when my husband and I were off on a boat trip with my stepdaughter and her boyfriend. And we were off in Maine, and it was getting, you know, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and we decided to get in a Boston whaler and tootle around and explore some of the islands. And we got to this island, and it looked nice, and we decided to get out and take a hike. So we beached the boat, and we took the rope and we tied it well around some rocks so it wouldn't go floating off in the water. And we went for this hike. And we were having a really nice time and lost all, you know, matter of time as we were joking and talking. And we finally got back to the boat and the tide had gone out. And instead of the boat just being on the beach, it was ridiculously tied to a rock in the midst of all this sand, and the water was way out behind us. So there were 4 of us, and my husband was strong, and Liz's boyfriend was strong. He was a strapping young college man. I thought, okay, I'm strong, but Liz, she didn't even weigh 100 pounds. She was so petite. But we got on either side of the boat, and we would say, 1, 2, 3, heave. 1, 2, 3, heave. And because none of us wanted to be stuck on this island all night. It was just deserted except for mosquitoes. And we finally heaved and hoed until we got the boat in the water. And it was finally floating, and we all got in, and we were so relieved. And Liz said, you know, we needed all of us to get that boat in the water. And we were like, yeah, we all did it together. And she said, no, I think you needed even me. I don't think you would have succeeded if I wasn't helping. And that was such a moment of epiphany to realize that was so true. Like, even though sometimes some people are the heavy lifters, sometimes you're just doing a little bit and you feel like it hardly counts, but it might make all the difference between success and failure. So when I'm with a group of people, I always try to think, what could I add to this? And I also try to appreciate everything that everybody else adds. So my advice is just do what you can. It might make all the difference between success and failure. So.
Great. I just love that story. Okay, so we have time for some questions, please. So I think the microphones are still at the heads of the aisles. And if it's possible to get the house lights up so I can see. There we go. Okay.
Hello.
Hello.
This is Neha Kishan, graduating with Ph.D. in computer science.
Yes. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you all for this great discussion. I was listening to all of your talks, and one point in the second half which came out was like, how even in today's world, we use different terminologies for different genders or with people with different backgrounds and all. So even when we all know we all have biases and we all intentionally try to work on that. So how do you all suggest or anticipate to work on this or see like how women in science or women in STEM can, like, I know I have turned a deaf ear. If someone tells me or this or that, I don't care. But it's difficult to get to that stage. So how can young women in STEM or science move ahead and deal with these scenarios, and how we as an institute or people in higher roles can help this mitigation happen?
I think that, because I lived with this charming thing for a really long time. So I developed some really specific tools to be my own sort of champion. Sometimes you have to go inside yourself. You can't get everything from outside. I think it's really important to be able to look at yourself and recognize your accomplishments. I don't know what it's like for men, but I know as a woman, it's also incredibly difficult to look at your accomplishments and say, gee, I'm really good at that. Oh, I did that well. When we try and say that, we feel horrible about, saying something great about ourselves. That is not something we're meant to do. But you have to get over that part because you're going to need to be your own cheerleader sometimes. And when I was in grad school and I was feeling bad and I thought I should quit, because you all do in grad school, it's okay. It's okay. We all feel it. It's the imposter syndrome. It's fine. I did this thing. I took out my CV once a year and I read it to myself, just me out loud. Okay, there it is. Yes, I did that. I did that. I did that. So for all the things I hadn't done, and for all of the real or perceived questions about my competency, right, about my competence as a scientist, I went through the list. I said, well, you know, whether I believe it or not, I did those things. They're written down. They were data to me. And as a scientist, you can appreciate that. And so find your way to be able to really rationally, not emotionally, but rationally remind yourself of your own accomplishments. It's been an incredible help to be your own cheerleader.
I've got one comment. First of all, I love your sorry. And there's a reason why I'm saying this. I think it's, while you have a list of accomplishments and all the things that we're all doing to pursue excellence, I think it's freeing. I think it's been freeing if you dig into who you are and your legacy and your culture, as you so beautifully display today. I think you can, as you lead your groups, you are then therefore also allowing other people to show their culture around you. And I know that this is gonna sound simple, but in our research group, we talk about research and then we spend another 30, 40, however long, just talking. And often it's either, we may have a discussion about tea, which is almost all cultures but American culture is very particular about how tea is prepared. And so this dynamic of discussing culture, bringing pictures from home, talking about yourself as an important piece of who you are and what you're bringing to the table, and letting that happen does start to create a culture that spreads, I think. So be proud of who you are, your legacy, and I think it frees other people to do the same. That's the next generation. That's what we have to do to solve all the problems, is bring as much of ourselves as possible to the work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Sasha. I'm a Ph.D. student in the Cognitive Science Department. Thank you so much for this panel. It's amazing to see the diversity, but also the similarity of opinions and advice given the diversity of the panel, how things seemingly are similar despite different fields. My question is with regards to persistence, finding your passion, but also what was mentioned prior with regards to creating an environment that accepts failure as part of success. And so while President Schmidt is in the room, what is our institutional strength into creating this culture of environment where failure is part of our success and strive for excellence? To what extent can this be an institutional responsibility, and where do you want to see our institution develop in that regard in the next couple of decades, right? Thank you.
Is this a question for President Smith?
No. Panel.
For the panel?
Is this for the panel?
It's definitely for the panel, yes.
Okay,
President Schmidt
all right.
was just mentioned, yeah. Sorry.
Sasha, we've had the conversation. I'm so glad that you're here asking this question out in front. And thank you for the Black Forest cupcakes that I need the recipe for. Your wife, again, culture. Thank you so much for... We had, again, the Rensselaer Forward Committee had conversations intentionally with various students, and Sasha was graciously giving us some time with another grad student to talk about this and other things. And again, I think Rensselaer, since 1824, Van Rensselaer talked a lot about hands-on experiential learning and apprenticeship. It's in our DNA to really focus on this. And I think the alumni are expecting us, and those who have had experiences here at Rensselaer that are very hands-on. I think we are gravitating and will continue to push this idea of getting hands-on, failing, iterating, and trying and making sure it all counts. We're having a discussion about this right now, and we're providing this information to President Smith. What he does with it is up to him. We don't do operational things, but just know that we've heard this over and over from grad students, undergrads, faculty, and staff across the board, that this is something that is really valuable, that's been here, that we can continue to push and revive, and figure out the supporting technologies that are here now that can address complexity in a way that will bring back this apprenticeship, but provide some scale, a smaller scale. So I think we can make that strategy happen, but it's up to him, not us. Thanks, Sasha.
Question over here, please.
Good afternoon. So in 1984, I was offered admission to RPI for a Ph.D. in physics on beautiful rice paper. And unfortunately, I ended up not attending and instead sold my soul off physics and got a degree in electrical and computer engineering and built a 30-year career in that. But I said to my son here, and he's graduating tomorrow, Ali Lichtenberg. Thank you, I'm very proud. So I'm not going to talk about boys and men. You know, I mean, as a woman, you know, we talked about men. I mean, I resonate with you, and I've gone through a lot of the experiences that you have. Not as an educator, but, you know, as a working engineer for 30 years and having young children, 2 boys, and, you know, having a career and building all kinds of cool computers that all of you have used and continue to use. But but in America, if you read the New York Times, men and boys have a lot of, you know, most, I'm not going to give some dark statistics, but the majority of young people who commit suicide are male. And there seems to be a mental health crisis kind of brewing. So how do you are training future engineers, and the majority of them are boys and men. I mean, they're the men. So how do you, you know, what are the things that we could do as educators and as parents to create a good mental environment? Thank you.
Can I give a story? Topic. Can I give us? I'm so sorry. I realized I just answered this question. First, I have 2 boys. I'm an electrical engineer, so I'm surrounded right now. And I'm trying to increase the population, of course, of women, and I see it in my classrooms. But I do have 2 boys, 6 and 9. I'm going to tell this brief story. Let me put this down again. So why does it make me tear up, of all the things? Why? Okay. Surprise. Sometimes this happens to me. Okay. So I designed these 2 different kinds of labs. Wow, I'm crying about a lab. That's how passionate I am. Unbelievable. Okay, so here we go. And I think it all relates to all the other things. But so I created these 2 types of labs. One was a design lab, top down, and one was bottom up. They're called alpha labs. And there is a group, one young woman who actually was an artist first, that was an electrical engineer at the time. And then there was a young man that was in this group. And I noticed for their design projects, high level, let's get this done, and they had some ownership and freedom, that their designs were so elegant. For a solution, what I mean is it was efficient, it was compact, it was well thought out, and it iterated quite a bit. You can tell. And they can explain every piece, simulation, and how they analyzed it. It was beautiful. So I sat down with the young woman when she described how art affected her design, and she eventually, I think, switched to ECSE. But this is the thing that made me tear up. Sorry. So what she told me about her partner, the young man, was that he had high anxiety. So every time I would come to review his his performance, he would like go to the bathroom and just throw up and cry and wouldn't say, like he was really having a hard time. But here's why I'm crying, I'm sorry. So after the final, after we gave all the grades out, they both did excellent in the class. This young man found me. He found me, he heard I was printing something, found me and stopped, came with tears in his eyes and said, I want to thank you for the way that you teach this course. Never in my life have I been able to demonstrate what I know by what I do. And it really affected me. And this is really important that you gave me this opportunity. Thank you for that. And my point is, I designed that course to open this up for young me, right? For a really quiet, shy young woman in the corner who thought deeply about things but was really shy. And yet it affected this young man to the point of tears to hunt me down. And I think that if you design for the people who are marginalized, who feel marginalized, you are going to capture just a huge group of people who also feel marginalized that you cannot tell by looking at them. And I see this in my class all the time, that we get a large swath of men, young men, who may participate in a different way that really enjoy this, along with people of color, along with women. And you can feel the class all raise itself because of a different dynamic. I think this is crucial and it's important. So I hope this helps answer your question. Thank you.
Time for maybe just one more question.
Great panel, everyone. This was very insightful and inspiring. I'm a PhD student, 5th year. I'm actually a mentee of Dr. Leo Wan, who I believe was trained under Dr. Vunyak Novakovic. My question is for all of you here, and it has to do with the idea of feeling small in the face of the large questions that we as researchers tackle. So how do you go about quantizing these massive questions that we try to answer into small, maybe experiments, research projects, and how do you determine whether or not your idea is actually worth pursuing? And once you go through pursuing that, we know we get really specialized and really technical in the things that we do. How do you approach trying to communicate that with the rest of society, maybe funding agencies who don't really have the exact knowledge or understanding or to understand how important and impactful your work is and why we should as a society support and fund and know about these very detailed, specific data points that we constantly work really hard to generate.
Thank you. Gordana, you want?
Okay, so I'm pretty sure that Leo is taking good care of you, so I hope this is the case. I think, it's a really good question. I think we all feel very small, in front of everything we don't know, like science is awesome, but it's also, some of the questions are very big questions and being studied for decades or centuries. I think some of the processes can really help with what you're bringing up. So you are formulating a question that you're really interested in, and then you, with the help of other people, are trying to find out like how you can really test the question, how you can do meaningful studies, meaningful experiments that will really probe, your hypothesis. It's your own work. It is like one-to-one conversation, but what we do a lot is once your idea is evolving, then you would present it to the entire lab and then you will get feedback from the people. And so, it's really in these interactions and the feedback of others when you can flesh out your ideas and then really like turn this initial question into some kind of a reasonable plan. Your mentor has a job to help you in this process. And I think experience is definitely a big factor in this story. You're just learning, but actually someone who is your mentor has already been there and can can help you study your question. So I think it's all about the interaction of people, about getting feedback. And this happens locally, like in your lab, and then you go to the next level. This is the whole purpose of review, scientific review, is that your results, your study is given to a group of experts serving as reviewers who have enough knowledge, enough expertise to give an honest, unbiased opinion about your work. And when we get back reviews, you know, sometimes they're favorable, sometimes they're less favorable, but you always try to take them seriously because you're trying to see what are these people telling you, and is this something that can help you improve what you do. So I don't think you should feel very small or discouraged or anything. I mean, this is very normal, but this shouldn't prevent you from being really ambitious with what you're trying to accomplish with your work. Thank you.
Okay, well, Shayla, Gordana, Marilyn, Karen, I want to thank you very much for your time this afternoon. This has been really delightful. I've learned a lot. I want to take your class. I think I might actually do well in science. No? Okay. So, but I also want to thank the audience for your kind questions and for your attention. And I'd like to invite you to the reception that is just outside in Evelyn's Cafe. So thank you very much.